Welcome to Every Musical Ever. This podcast contains strong language and it's not suitable for children.
Hello, welcome to another week on Every Musical Ever. Today I'm talking Matilda The Musical with my guest Joel Creasey.
It's time to chat, just you and me. How many musicals can there be? I hope that there's infinity. Kettle on and pour the tea. Every musical ever. It's a show that is so clever. It's a very fine endeavor. Every musical ever.
Hello. I'm Richard Carroll, your host. This is Every Musical Ever. This week we're talking about Matilda The Musical. I'm very pleased to be joined today by my mate Joel Creasey, very well-known, celebrated Australian comedian. Joel is a bit of a Matilda superfan, so we had some fun chats about the show and his in-depth knowledge of every element of every production around the world and the number of times he's seen it. I hope you enjoyed last week's episodes about Godspell, especially my chat with Stephen Schwartz on Friday. That was a real treat to be able to talk to him about Godspell, but also just about songwriting in general. I found him really enlightening. And this Friday, I've got another theatrical legend on the show. I'll be talking to Matthew Warchus, who is the director of Matilda the Musical. He's also, of course, the artistic director of the Old Vic. He's a Tony Award-winning director. And I'm really thrilled that he made time to talk to me about Matilda. We got into a lot about the development of the show, choices that he made, how things were planned to be originally while they were workshopping the show. There's quite a few surprises for me there. And we talked a bit about the movie version that is supposed to be being filmed right now, but obviously has been put back till next year, which we mentioned at the end of my chat with Joel too. As always, I love to hear from you at Every Musical Pod on social media or email everymusicalpod@gmail.com. There's a link in the episode description. Check out our Patreon for more exclusive content. And here is my chat with Joel Creasey about Matilda.
Every musical ever, you can listen wherever, no script whatsoever. Skip an episode never. Every musical ever, squeeze.
There's something about Matilda that makes me so happy. I mean, I think Tim Minchin's a genius, and his sister, Katie, who's divine, was my tour manager on a tour of the Melbourne Comedy Festival Roadshow, and we were somewhere between like Esperance and Kalgoorlie in regional Western Australia, and Matilda had just opened. I think it was on the West End where it first opened, and she played me the cast recording, and I was blown away.
Yeah.
And I loved the songs. But like these four hetero comics in the back seat were like, why are we listening to this? And I forced them through the whole album. Then the second I could see it alive, I did. And it was on Broadway, and I went on my own. And when Matilda walked out for the curtain call, she got a standing ovation from the audience. And I will always remember that moment because I was in tears, and I'm not a crier at all.
Yeah, it asks so much of the child actors and they really rise to the occasion. A bit like Billy Elliot, I guess. I remember that really vividly as well, like the first time I saw it. For some reason, when that Matilda walks out, something about the fact that, you know, everyone goes to the sides of the stage and she just walks on her own and you really realise how tiny she is, and she's carried this entire show, whoever that actor is. You're like, fuck, this little kid has really brought it.
Oh, I know. And, you know, it's so rare that you go and see a show and you're like, bring the children cast back on, or the kid cast, or whatever the term for it is. Because, like, often, you know, you go and see Mary Poppins, you're like, oh, God, Jane and Michael Banks, they're exhausting, get them off. But with Matilda, it's like, get them back on. They are so incredible. And also, I like that each member of the child cast has a character, which I think is really cool, and they all really embrace that.
Yeah. I did a podcast with Keegan Joyce about Oliver, and he played Oliver in the musical when he was a kid. And we were talking about how first of all, like the kids are all like, you know, kid 1, kid 2, kid 3, but also even Oliver is kind of shoved to the side in the musical, and they make it sort of all about Fagin, because I think for that exact reason, they're like, we don't want to see the kid, you know, he's boring. Like, let's see the fun, naughty adult character. And of course, we have a fun, naughty adult character in Miss Trunchbull, who's also amazing. But Matilda is they're really like at the center, and they drive the action, which is unusual.
It's such an amazing part. When she walks out, it's such an impressive moment. And I've never seen a bad Matilda, like truly. And I reckon I've seen it 10 times.
Wow.
And I've never seen, perhaps more. Every single Matilda has been incredible. Although there's one, whenever I'm drunk and have friends over, we put on YouTube, and you get, you know, fall into like a, you know, one of those gay rainbow holes on YouTube.
Show tune holes, yes.
Yes, and you've watched 90 minutes of Rhonda Birchmore and Hey all of a sudden. And the Olivier, I think it's the Olivier performance of Matilda, where the 4 of them sing Naughty together. Those 4 are incredible. And then there's this one of the 4 is this young blonde girl who's just incredible. I'm like, I wish I could have seen you as Matilda. You seem amazing.
Let's go back to the sort of origin story. So obviously the book was like a beloved book. Were you a Roald Dahl fan as well?
I was a massive Roald Dahl fan. I loved the film. And I only found out maybe last week that the actress that plays Trunchbull in the film plays Aunt Dursley in Harry Potter. The evil Aunt Dursley. I did not realise that gets blown up by Harry. It makes complete sense now. But I can't believe I've only just found that out. Although I did only just find out the other day that Anastasia Palaszczuk's surname is pronounced Palaszczuk. I thought it was Palachuk. So I'm not the brightest of sparks.
Well, it does look like that. It does look like that.
I know. I'm going to say the other day, about a year ago.
And I loved the book of Matilda as a kid. I loved all of Roald Dahl. He was like my hero. I think of Roald Dahl, possibly because I'm British, I think of Roald Dahl as being very British, and his sort of writing and his humour as being very British. Because the film is obviously like Americanized, but I think a lot of people love both the book and that movie kind of separately in different ways.
Yeah, I think I was probably introduced to it I don't even know what I saw first, either the film or read the book. But yeah, I mean, I love the books as well. And I do like that they're British in the musical as opposed to American. And I'm fairly sure on Broadway as well, they do British accents from memory. Yeah.
They do, yeah. I read that there was sort of a little bit of pressure to Americanize it when they took it to Broadway. I think partly because Americans know that movie.
Yes.
They obviously resisted that, and they transferred it pretty much exactly as is, and they took over a couple of the leads from the West End production, and really, we can get into this later maybe, but you know, like Matilda ran for nearly 4 years on Broadway, so it's a success, but I think it never got the acclaim and sort of love that it's got in the UK and in Australia, maybe in other places around the world. And I think that on Broadway, they're really resistant to overseas productions and overseas creatives. I mean, kind of a dumb thing to say, because obviously there've been such huge successes from like Andrew Lloyd Webber and Les Mis and that kind of thing, but there does seem to be this thing about stuff that comes in from overseas that's already a big hit, and kind of being like, okay, well, we'll be the judge of that, you know. And
I think also the year that it moved to Broadway, it was the same year as Kinky Boots, which is, you know, Cyndi Lauper and Harvey Fierstein. And so I feel like that was such an American production and show as well, that it was kind of country versus country there. And we all know at the Tony Awards who's going to win in that situation.
This is the crazy thing, is that Kinky Boots is, yes, not just so American, but so New York. I think Harvey Fierstein and Cyndi Lauper are both such New York icons. But of course, that show Kinky Boots is also set in the UK. It's kind of this weird thing where it's like a British story, but very American in terms of creative team. And, you know, like they cleaned up at the Tonys. And I think, look, fair enough, Kinky Boots, you know, it's a fun show. I like it too. But I do think that it is one of the biggest robberies, the fact that Tim Minchin's score lost out the Tony Award for Best Score to Cyndi Lauper's very poppy Kinky Boots.
Yeah, I really like Kinky Boots. I've seen that about maybe 3 or 4 times, but I couldn't get up to the 10s with Kinky Boots. Like, I love it, but I'm probably not buying a ticket again, or not for a while. Whereas when Matilda comes back, I'm buying a ticket again.
You're there.
It just brings me so much joy. I'm there.
Yeah. I mean, I think the music is beautiful as well in Matilda, but it's certainly, when you look at the lyrics, and this is one of the reasons why Tim Minchin and Roald Dahl is such a great match, because that use of language. Yeah. And when you compare it to sort of everybody say yeah type lyrics in Kinky Boots, seems like it's a bit of a crime to me. So Tim Minchin, apparently, when he was, you know, back in Perth, long before he was famous and he was writing musicals, I think for like his mates or his local amateur society or something, he wrote to the Roald Dahl estate and said, I want to do a musical of Matilda. Would that be okay? And they responded to him. He's kind of shocked. They responded to him and they basically said, oh, we're open to this idea of, having musicals written of our intellectual property. So if you send us over, some songs and some materials and we can make a judgment then. And he was a bit like, oh God, no, I just wanted to like write something for 3 performances in the local thing. He kind of got very intimidated and never did anything about it. And then it just kind of one of those fortuitous things that it came back around to him and he was approached to write it for the RSC. But it does seem like a perfect fit.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's where it opened. Yeah, it was a perfect fit. And I mean, because I know him relatively well through comedy and through his sister. And I went to his sister's 40th and it was at his beautiful house in Sydney. And I'm such a fan. But I don't know how much. I feel like every time I see him, all I talk about is Matilda. And I know he's done so much else, but I just want to talk about that musical you wrote. That's all I want to talk about ever. And I'll go into really real detail with him about the actors and actresses that have played it all around the world. And he's like, I'm not aware of who's playing Miss Honey, who the understudy Miss Honey is on the European tour right now. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's something that he is quite keen to always stress is that because of his profile, people often refer to it as like Tim Minchin's Matilda, as if he created the whole thing.
Yeah.
And he's always very careful to say, it's Roald Dahl's Matilda, and Dennis Kelly wrote the book of the musical, Matthew Warchus and the RSCs created it, and I wrote the score, and yeah, I'm really proud of it.
Yeah.
Of course, I was a big part of it, but like, it's not my show.
Yes. It's just such a fun show as well, walking in. Like when you first get the set is so impressive as well. I love the proscenium and all the letters, and it's just a really fun from the second you get in. Although I did take my partner Jack to see it last year on the West End, and we went and we bought like last ticks and went to a matinee of Matilda. And probably the wrong show to be sitting up the back on a matinee of. A lot of kids moving around, a lot of crying, a lot of crunching. And I take my musical theatre very seriously. Like, I'm getting a bladder infection. I'm not going to the bathroom halfway through Act 1. That is not happening. So I was annoyed that he didn't get the proper experience.
Did you turn into a bit of a Miss Trunchbull with all the kids?
I was getting very, I'm so passag that I can never say anything to someone's face, but I was getting very like tutty and doing a lot of, over the shoulder glares, a lot of icy glares to families that are just trying to have a day out.
Fair enough. Yeah, those families have probably been like, we'll go to a matinee so that we don't disturb the serious theatre goers.
I know, and here I am, day one. I've got a bit of jet lag and I want to see Matilda.
Fair enough. You saw it on Broadway, and was that in London, did you say, that time?
I saw it on Broadway first. I think I saw it a few times on Broadway. I'm sure I saw it with Verdi Carvel when he first opened it. Because I also think Trunchbull is one of like the greatest roles
Yeah, we're talking
ever. And then I saw Christopher Sieber play it, who I also saw in Shrek. He played, was he Farquaad or Pinocchio? He was one of the two. One of those like really great character. No, he was Farquaad in Shrek on Broadway, which I saw with like Sutton Foster, which was very exciting. And then I'm sure I saw it in Australia a bunch of times. And then the last time I saw it was the West End. So I've seen it, been on every different continent.
Yes, you have. You're a real groupie.
Love it. Yeah, a massive groupie.
One of the things that reminds me of is that one thing they've never gone in for in Matilda is like star casting, or I should say like stunt casting. They've had amazing musical theatre performers with great CVs in every country that it's played, but they've never done the whole kind of like, let's bring in someone from a TV show or reality show, even in the smaller roles,
like Chicago on Broadway. You're like,
yes.
who's playing Velma Kelly now?
Totally, which is a bit of a shame because Chicago is one of those shows. I remember when I first saw the original London cast of the revival version, and it was Ruthie Henshall and Uta Lemper, and it was all about how incredible these performers were, singing, acting, dancing, and just commanding the stage. The fact that I guess one of the main reasons why it's run so long, but in both London and New York, it's really turned into kind of like, let's rotate through the latest reality star.
I know, it's such a strong show, and it's also such a simple show. It's like, I don't need to see it stunt cast. I don't need to see Nancy Pelosi playing Roxy Hart, okay? Like, the show holds up on its own. So yeah, that's so true about Matilda. Like, I can't think, they're all real music theatre stars, I guess, that have played. Like, a lot of, I've seen a lot of previous Elphabas, because I've seen that a lot of times. I've seen a lot of Elphabas play Miss Honey, and I always get a real thrill. Like, that's going to be a big belt in Act 2.
But you are a genuine show queen. I don't think that's bringing in the out-of-town tourists.
I'm such a show queen. If I could sing, I would not be doing stand-up. Well, I'd be playing Trunchbull somewhere, I hope.
That's true. Yeah, so let's talk about Trunchbull. Obviously, a fabulous drag role, which is quite an established thing in musical theatre. Obviously, we've got it in Hairspray, and apart from the actual drag roles like in Kinky Boots. What are your thoughts on that decision?
I personally love it. I think it's wonderful. There are some great women I could see taking over the role, but everyone I've seen play Trunchbull has delivered, and it's so funny. I guess there's a gag in the hairy legs as well and all that. I don't know. They're so wonderful because the traditional songs probably aren't the best songs in the show. It's just the lines and the costuming and the size. I think they do cast with size in mind, so it's
totally. And then they pad them as well. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Why don't we talk about the songs now? Do you have any straight out any favorite numbers?
Well, I think Naughty is such an incredible number because this 9-year-old has to hold the stage for 3.5 minutes on her own, and she does that song in the bedroom. That's pretty impressive.
Totally.
Although in that too, she does that again. That's hard to pull off. So I do love that song. Although I do also really love Loud, Mrs. Wormwood's song. But I think I was kind of obsessed with Leslie Margarita, who was playing the role on Broadway, and I got really into watching her YouTube videos behind the scenes. And so I think I was kind of going, when I was seeing it a lot on Broadway and buying last minute tickets, I was just going to see her perhaps. I never went to stage door to meet her. I should have done that.
You should have done. I bet she'd be gagging for it, Leslie Margarita.
Yeah.
If you're listening, Leslie, engage with Joel. Engage with him. He loves you.
Please, I love it.
Yeah, Naughty is a great song because obviously the show starts with Miracle, which is, opening numbers always set the world of the show. And what I love about that is it sets up the world of the show, but rather than the small particular world of Matilda's family, it sets up the kind of the tone of the show. And what we're looking at is a world where we're really emphasizing that thing that we all recognize, which is, awful parents who think that their kids are special and the kids are actually hideous, but they think they're amazing.
Musically, it's a weird number as well. It feels a bit jarring in a good way. It starts with the out of kind of, I don't know what instrument it is, but it's all a bit out of tune and almost like the orchestra pit's warming up. It feels not a particularly traditional way to get into a musical, but I really like it.
Yeah, it's maybe sort of a cross between a little prologue and an opening number.
I always get very stressed about any balloons on stage in any production that require helium, and there is a moment where it's let go and someone else grabs it, and I'm like, oh, I cannot be here the night you don't grab it. That's just, for me, it's like when Glinda throws Elf with a Witch's Hat. I've seen them drop it so many times and it ruins the moment.
Why put it in? Why, guys? Come on. Yeah.
No throwing. There's a lot of gays in music theatre. We can't catch, all right? So just put it down.
Is it worth it? I know that, it's so disappointing if that ever happens, but on the times when they do it, is it worth it for the thrill,
True. It is worth it. Well, I guess other people aren't overthinking it the way I am because most people are only seeing it once.
It's true. It's not a complaint I've heard a lot about the show.
No, the one helium balloon in Miracle at the start of Matilda.
Yeah,
well, you've heard it now.
I enjoyed the show. However, the helium balloon moment really ruined it for me.
I love that number, and I do love her arrival. I'm that one person in the crowd that applauds Matilda walking onto stage.
She gets entrance applause.
Yeah, she gets entrance applause. So I'm like, oh, she's going to really go for it. If she knows there's a fan in the audience, she's going to really hit those high notes in Naughty.
Gonna let her know this is a special show. It's not just any old show.
No, she's got friends in. She's got friends and fans in.
Yes. And so Naughty is the next song after that. So that's kind of our introduction to Matilda. Like I said, it's a really impressive solo number for that actress. And again, really sets up her character and also the world that she's living in really well.
Yeah, and I love the set. I think as well for the bedroom, and she sits just above her bed and sings the song and does some karate. I've seen it so many times. Does something that cute little karate routine. It's a great song.
Yeah, it's really well staged. I love that. Yeah, that sort of martial arts thing. Seeing her do that so early in the show really says, this is a tough kid. Because, she's really into books and intellectual, all that stuff. I think that really helps us see her as someone who's really kind of energetic and outward focused. It's really smart.
Yes, and also all the, she's always in all the greys and everyone else is in full colour, and the ratty hair, it's really well done.
Yeah. The thing I love about, I love the design as well, I love a lot about it, but I remember the song that really took my breath away the first time I saw the show was that school song at the school gates.
With the letters.
Yes, because they sing through all of that verse and stuff, and it's all it's great lyrics, and it really kind of sets the scene. And then they sing all through again with the letters, and you realise that it's been going A, B, C, D. It's so, so clever.
Actually, it's genius. I remember, I don't know who it was I went with, but I remember them like tapping me in that number, being like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" I was like, "Yeah, it's a great show." And that's like the adult cast that are having to pretend to be like 12 or something.
Yeah.
But I love it, and they sort of climbing the gates and stepping on each letter. It's so well choreographed. It's brilliant. And I don't think of it as a show like a dancing show, but there's actually quite a bit to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe it won Best Choreography at the Olivier's.
Well, rightly so.
Well, I mean, it cleaned up,
Yeah.
except at the Tonys, of course. But
Yes,
we've already
wrong.
We've already been there.
What?
Hi, I'm just breaking in for a minute to ask you to consider donating to Transcend. Founded in 2012, Transcend was the first parent-led peer support network and information hub for transgender children and their families in Australia. They provide a safe and inclusive space for parents and carers, community connection, medical, social, educational and legal information and resources, and much more. You can learn more or make a tax-deductible donation at transcendoz.org. There's a link in the episode description. But there was a controversy because the Matildas were disqualified from being eligible for Tonys. The reason that they gave was that because there's 4 of them, so the Tonys committee always meet and make a judgment, but they said that that it's too many sharing the role. So previously, I think Billy Elliott's had won a Tony, but there was 3 of them, and so for some reason they decided 3 was fine, but 4 was not acceptable. They did give them like a special award, but it was a bit controversial because they weren't considered for Best Actress, which they won at the Olivier's and the Helpmans.
Yeah, that sucks, because I feel like they can hold their own. They should definitely have been nominated. I probably should have won.
Other songs. Another favourite of mine is a Trunchbull song, which is The Smell of Rebellion.
That's in Act 2, isn't it? With that's the gymnastics routine. Oh, I love that number.
Yeah, and again, just such a brilliant marrying of the song and the staging, which I think is the sort of thing that you get when somewhere like the Royal Shakespeare Company develops a show, and it's developed within a company. So you have the director and you have like all of the departments involved with the development of the show, as opposed to just the writers in the room. I think that's one of the reasons why it all syncs so well.
It's brilliant. And, it's at that great little, gymnastics routine that they do, which really isn't that, they're just jumping on a little trampoline, but it's so effective. And the build up to the Trunchbull doing some sort of somersault over it, which I'm sure is quite simple, but it's, you get really into it and excited, much like all the children in the crowd. And I think that's the joy that it brings me. It kind of makes you feel like a kid again.
Yeah, the kids really get put through it in terms of the stuff that they do. And I believe they have to do that every show, in their physical warm-up, they do that vaulting horse thing because they always want to, because of course, especially because the kids rotate through, so they only do like 1 out of every 4 shows. They make them do that before the house opens every night because they don't want them to be doing it for the first time in 4 days on stage in front of an audience.
Wow. I was going to ask that because I know there's 4 Matildas, but I never know how many of the child cast there is. That's a ton of kids.
That's a good point. I don't know. Maybe it is only 3 child casts and 4 Matildas. I'm not sure. But even so, it's a lot of kids. I think they get away pretty well with having the adults play kids as well. That's the sort of thing that could just be like, oh God, this is terrible. But I think it works.
Yeah, and they only ever seem to be a couple, whereas the genuine kids, there's 12 of them, and they've all got a name. I love that number that Bruce Bogtrotter scene where he eats the chocolate cake, which for me, from like the film, I don't know, I always used to find it quite terrifying in a way, that scene in the film when I was a kid watching it, and Cookie bringing out the cake all sweaty and gross, but it's so well done on stage with that fake cake that he's pushing down to make it look like he's cleared it. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the things that makes Roald Dahl so exceptional, is that he never shied away from that sort of grossness. Yeah, the idea of like dirty cooks and things like that, or like the overeating and the disgusting slobbery kind of nature of all that.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I love that about Roald Dahl. That's a great moment. Also, I love just the brilliance of I've seen it where they slide on, but just the 9 desks that pop up from the stage that you had no idea were there. It's such smart staging.
Yeah, totally. Another song that I think we need to talk about is When I Grow Up. And apparently, When I Grow Up was in the show, when it was being developed. And I'm not sure where they put it to start with, but they kept moving it around the show. They couldn't sort of work out where it had the best function. And essentially, it ended up sort of being removed from the narrative. And what they did, which I think works brilliantly, is just shoved it at the beginning of Act 2. So it's not really a part of the action, but they've got this beautiful staging. Again, like the swings, like the kids going over the audience with the swings. It's like, hoo-wee, it's ambitious, but it's so exciting to watch.
Oh, it's so awesome, that number. Maybe that's what they performed on the Tonys, actually. That is if I take a friend to see the show, that's the moment. if they haven't cried yet, that's the moment that'll really get them. It's incredible. I love it. And also because it comes off the back of that weird moment, which also always freaks me out, but I think that's more as a stand-up, there's the element of the audience being a little bit more volatile than I guess a music theatre crowd, and the potential for hecklers, which you don't get at Les Mis. That moment where Mr. Wormwood sort of does that very staged interaction with the crowd at the opening of Act 2 always makes me very nervous. Because as I said, I'm always expecting a heckler whenever you talk to the crowd. So when they get into, also when I Grow Up starts, I'm like, okay, thank God, we're back into the actual show. The house lights are down. Nobody can see me crying. Good.
Yes. And it's very smart of them because, they had that kind of like, Act 2 hasn't actually started, but I'm doing a song with that telly song. And then they have When I Grow Up at the opening because, it's sort of a cliche about first song of Act 2 is, everyone's settling back into their seats and finishing their popcorn and not paying attention, turning their phones off. And especially with the show, it's going to have a lot of the kids in the audience, it's especially true. And I think that having that telly song helps get that out of the way before When I Grow Up, which is so beautiful.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And it's also it's not a particularly long song. And it's such a hit. You feel like it's going to be reprised again later in the show. But unless it's part of the curtain call, you don't really see it again. And that's what makes it so special. It's kind of like 3 minutes and it's done.
Yeah, true. And that's definitely a song that, I guess because it sits outside the action, that, can be lifted out of the show and, has a poignancy just in general.
Yeah. But it's incredibly nostalgic and spot on. Everything they sing in that song, you're like, I'm still thinking that to this day when I grow up. That is me on that swing, even though they're kids. I'm thinking the exact same thing.
That's, I think, one of the reasons why it appeals to adults as well as kids is because there's that poignancy to it, because the kids are singing it genuinely. Like, when I grow up, I'll eat ice cream every day and I'll be able to do whatever I want. And so as an adult, you listen to that and you're like, oh God, that's what I thought too. But actually life's so much more complicated and difficult. Yeah.
And also there's, they start with the younger kids on the swings and then the adult cast come on and it's really seamlessly done. Yeah, you're right. You can't really tell a huge difference between the two. I guess they're casting very young looking adult cast.
Well, yes and no, but they do have some adults that they cast who have to be below a certain height. But there's also other ensemble members in the show, certainly because I can remember certain actors who did it in Australia who were actually pretty big because they're playing other roles or understudying other roles, and they also play the kids.
Yeah.
The other, I reckon, if I had to choose a favourite song from the show, I would say Quiet.
Oh, yeah. That's amazing.
That is such a beautiful song. And again, like I was just saying about When I Grow Up, as a standalone song, just like it says so much. And I think what's really interesting about it is it's not a song that sounds exclusively from a child's perspective. The idea of like, I've got so much going on in my head and, like all that, it's a mature, complexly written, like I think if you hear it sung by an adult, it's incredibly powerful as well.
Yeah. You can take that song however you want, but if you're a young, I know my parents used to take me to see musicals as a kid and I used to be so envious of the children on stage, but also, you could never really relate to the child role because they weren't quite as modernized when I was going to see musicals when I was younger. But, if you were someone like me who wanted to be in the theatre world and you saw someone singing a song like Quiet, which really touches on kind of everything you're going through at that time, it would be very special.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about like how it compares to other kind of kids musicals or musicals about kids more specifically, because I guess, the two sort of classics are Oliver and Annie. This is a different kind of beast, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it's like I said about When I Grow Up, unlike Annie, which what's the what's
Tomorrow?
the song that's ever, like,
tomorrow?
Tomorrow, every 2 seconds, you're like, okay, we get it. I guess it's unfair to put them side by side because they were written in vastly different times, but they're really incomparable. Although I do love Oliver, but I don't love Oliver for the child cast.
No, and again, I talked about this with Keegan, that Oliver, the character, is such a cipher, and that partly comes from the book Oliver Twist, but like it's just a series of things happening to him or happening around him that he happens to be around for. Annie, I think, probably has more agency, but even so, like Daddy Warbucks has to send his secretary to the orphanage to pick out an orphan and then take her to live with him. And yes, she has like this effect in his life. But with Matilda, it's really like everyone's ignoring her and she has to kind of battle her way into the world. Oh, yeah. It's incredible. I would love to know how many people they have to audition to find those 4 girls to play that role, because, you'd have like, they're so supremely talented. They must go through hundreds and hundreds of people. Because I'd seen it on Broadway, and I think I
must have seen the original Broadway cast. I was really ready to be disappointed in Australia, just with with the child cast, because it's like, how are they going to find anyone to do that much heavy lifting? She carries the show. And yeah, as I said, that was sensational.
Totally, yeah. James Miller as Trunchbull, Elise McCann as Miss Honey, Marika Aubrey
Yes.
as Mrs. Wormwood, and many more.
I do like that Miss Honey song, My House. I think it's because it's the closest I'm going to get to a real belt in the show, which as the basic bitch that I am, I love that when I go to see a musical. I need a tough woman to belt a number at me at some point. I don't mind where or when. So I'm glad I do get that in that song. It doesn't quite get to where I want it to go, I guess, but it is quite beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's a deliberate choice character-wise, because Miss Honey is, such a particular kind of type of character. Yeah.
Last time I saw it on the West End, when I saw that matinee performance, I saw Hayden T, who's a good friend, play Trunchbull, and like even though the audience were a hot mess of crunching, sniffling children, I mean, he was incredible. No surprises, but really an amazing Trunchbull.
Oh, totally. I would have loved to have seen Hayden do it. I didn't get to London while he was playing the role.
When he got the role, I was like, oh yeah, checks out. Like that is the perfect person. Completely get it. I'm buying a ticket now.
Are you familiar with the work of Dennis Kelly, who wrote the book?
A little bit, not so much, but a little bit.
Yeah, because he wrote, he's written plays like Orphans and Osama the Hero, like written quite a lot of some violent or like shows about violence and, extremely adult kind of material. So again, it's a really interesting choice that he came along to write the book of the show.
And it's very funny. It's like everything, everything's got there's nothing feels out of place or, I don't know. Often as a comic, I go and watch shows and I go, it's the wrong gag. Or you're delivering that wrong. Whereas I've never really felt that in Matilda or in Matilda. That it's all written so well that it's kind of hard to stuff it up, I guess.
And again, I wonder if this comes back to the fact that it was developed by the Royal Shakespeare Company as opposed to developed by commercial producers, so that the people that you have in the room and people making decisions are the artistic director of the company and the creative artistic team, as opposed to a bunch of commercial producers who want stuff to be more clearly laid out for the audience, or are worried what the out of towners will think.
Where did they out of town? Where was it?
So it debuted in Stratford at the Royal Shakespeare Company Theatre in Stratford.
Right.
So debuted in Stratford in November 2010 to January 2011.
Yeah.
So it's basically their Christmas musical. And then it premiered in the West End in November 2011. So I'm sure that they probably had their eye on a West End transfer, but only as much as you always have your eye on a West End transfer for anything that you do. Yeah. But there was no guarantee. I think, it's just, a company like the RSC can put money and resources and time into something that's going to play a 4-month season in Stratford, because that's what they're there to do.
That theatre in Stratford is amazing. I saw a musical version of The Merry Wives of Windsor there with Judi Dench.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I was probably like 14 and my parents took me because I love Judi Dench. And I went to a matinee and I was waiting for her to come out of stage door, waiting in the rain. It was like around Christmas time. It was really rainy and she hadn't left. She wasn't leaving the theatre between the matinee and the evening performance. But her manager had by chance popped out to the theatre bar when my parents were waiting. So I'm standing in the rain getting soaked. I brought this little koala from Australia to give to Judi Dench. My parents
You're just there on your own and they're in the bar.
They're in the bar and they get talking to Judi Dench's manager and they've been talking for a while and then about 15 minutes in, they're like, oh, actually, our son's outside in the rain. He'd love to meet Judi. 15 minutes I've been standing out there in the rain for. There's no one else waiting out by the stage door for Judi Dench. And her manager was like, let me take down your details. And when I got home to Perth, I had a postcard waiting for me from Judi Dench, written by her. Wasn't just like, hi, thanks for coming to the show. Like a decent long postcard. Please come and say hi next time you're in town. Love, Judi. It was very sweet.
That's beautiful. Oh, yeah. That makes me feel so good about Judi. I mean, not that I didn't already.
Yeah, I love it. But it was just, bizarre show, a musical of Merry Wives of Windsor. But
how was it?
Quite get. It was interesting. Judi Dench was amazing in it, but
of course,
that theatre that Matilda plays though on the West End in
the
Seven
Cambridge
Dials.
Theatre.
What a spot! If you're going to be in a show, that's surely one of the theatres you want to be at.
It's also one of the theatres that when you, as an Australian or someone who lives in Australia, when you walk into a theatre like that, you go, oh, that's right. These West End and Broadway theatres are actually incredibly tiny. You really feel like you're kind of like in a space, like certainly if you sit up on the balcony, you're kind of like looking right down on the stage, and we get so used here to the enormous barns that musicals play in here. But something like the Cambridge Theatre is really, really intimate, which is great.
Oh yeah, the lobby is tiny.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like being like in the bow of a ship. And then as you go in, it just gets wider and wider. Because I think I saw Chicago there when I was like the first time I saw it when I was like 11 or something.
Yeah, and I went there many times to see Jerry Springer the Opera, which is my favorite musical.
Oh, right.
And that's where
is
that
it
played
really?
Yeah. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Oh, I've got to see it.
It's available. I know that it's available on DVD, so you can probably stream it somewhere. It's really, really smart and awesome. I highly recommend it. The
Cambridge Theatre as well. Great shopping. You can. There's something so West End about it as well. I mean, you can be at a pub, across the road, but when it's across the road, it's actually like 3 meters away from the wall of the Cambridge Theatre, and there's something very special about that. And you don't get that on Broadway either.
I think you're right. I think there's something about the West End, even more so than Broadway, that, Broadway is sort of all about the out-of-town tourist now, and certainly with big musicals. And I guess musicals maybe are in the West End to more of an extent, but you can go to see a West End play and you really feel like, oh, these are people who like had a day at work and then they've stopped off and had a drink and something to eat and they're going to see a play. It's just like a part of a way of life. Yeah.
I do like the theatre it played on Broadway because I've seen quite a few shows there.
I don't know which one.
I saw Hello Dolly there.
Was it the Schubert?
Schubert, which is I think beside the booth. It's that great lane. There's also that shop that says it sells all the Broadway programs. You can go and buy an overpriced sign, tea towel or something. I do like that part of Broadway.
That overpriced tea towel part.
Yeah, yeah, and I fall for it every time.
One of the funny things about Matilda is, for me at least, that it has obviously this supernatural element to it. And what's weird for me is that when I think about the show, I don't think of it as a supernatural show. I think of it as about, this little girl who's like super smart and incredibly like ahead of her time and who overcomes all these obstacles because she's so intelligent. And I don't forget exactly, but it's not prominent in my mind that, and also she can like move things with her brain.
You saying that was what reminded me. I completely forget. And then because I don't think there is any, they don't imply that she has any magical powers really until the second act, unless I'm completely wrong.
Really far in, yeah.
When she knocks over the water jug with the newt in it. But all of that feels so Roald Dahl, back on what you were saying about the grubby and disgusting. The newt up the knickers scene, it feels very Roald Dahl and there's a real nostalgia moment in that.
I think it's pretty impressive that, I guess both in the book and the musical, that supernatural element doesn't kind of ruin the story. Because it could easily, if you think about like, you're well into this story about this girl who's going to use her intelligence and smarts to make a better life for herself. It would be quite easy for that supernatural element to be like, oh, well, that's kind of a bit disappointing because it makes it less relatable. But actually they managed to make it seem like she's so intelligent that she's able to, her mind has these powers,
Yeah, absolutely. Another storyline I always forget in the show is the librarian storyline with the acrobat and which is meant to be her parents. It's not in the book or the film.
I don't think so, no.
And I don't know. I guess when I go and see it, I mean, as I said, I'll keep seeing it as long as it plays. But that's the one storyline maybe in the show that I find a little bit like, oh, okay. But, it's such a small part of the show.
It's kind of a beautiful, charming thing, and the way it's staged, again, is very beautiful. But it's not necessarily helping with the plot. And it's interesting that one of the few criticisms that the reviews said was always that the show is a little bit long, especially Act 2 is a little bit long. So.
Ah, right. Yeah, I guess it is. I never thought of that. I always think of that scene with the librarian wanting Matilda to tell her a story. I'm like, get a grip, get Netflix.
Come on, Dal. Take a good hard look at it.
Yeah, this is a 9-year-old telling you a story. Stop crying, babe.
You're in a position of responsibility. Set an example.
You're a librarian. You're making too much noise.
You're a librarian if you never heard a book mentioned before. Hey, if you like Every Musical Ever, please check out our Patreon page. There's a link in the episode description below. It's a great way to support the show and allow us to keep paying theatre performers through this pandemic and beyond. You can support the show from as little as $5 a month. You'll get every episode early. You'll get extended video episodes. There are exclusive episodes like one on Australian musicals with Tom Sherrar and one on all 3 musical versions of A Star Is Born with Elise McCann. That'll be out soon. You'll get episodes released early, like our Avenue Q episode with Josie Lane, which will be on the main feed in 2021, but is currently up on Patreon. And you'll get all sorts of other extra content as a thank you for being a supporter for the show. Click the link in the episode description below to support the show. Thank you so much. One of the things now, obviously the show's had like rave reviews, certainly in London, Australia, and in New York it had rave reviews.
Yeah.
New York Post said, once in a blue moon, a show comes out blazing and restores your faith in Broadway. Matilda the Musical is that show. I mean, you can't get much better than that. However,
No.
so I have an issue with David Coate from Time Out New York, who he wrote a positive review, but he said Matilda is a kid's musical, not a musical that happens to be about a kid, which I think is just absolutely opposite of the truth.
I always think of, that's so incorrect.
What he said was, Matilda is a kid's musical, not a musical that happens to be about a kid. As such, its attractions may be limited to younger spectators and die-hard Roald Dahl fans. That would be a pity, since Matilda is wickedly smart and wildly fun. So he kind of contradicts himself. But
Yeah, he very much contradicts himself.
Come on, Americans. Like, that's not cool, you know?
No, and I've always thought it was possibly a little scary for kids, the show. I mean, I wouldn't take children to anything, but I'm certainly not taking a child to see Matilda.
And that's part of the thrill. And again, it was always part of the thrill of Roald Dahl, is that as a child, you don't feel like you're being talked down to, and you feel a little bit like you're seeing glimpses of things that you're aware of as a child, like, you know, the infallibility of adults and cruelty to children and things like that no one talks to you about. They try and shield you from. But this show and this book kind of acknowledges them and talks to you about them. That's why it's so exciting.
And there's a lot of adult jokes and sort of those, you know, winks off stage. And I think it's a perfectly rounded show. Hence I've seen it so many times. Yeah.
I wonder if there's a little bit of the panto tradition in it. I mean, with the sort of, you know, the male playing the female and things like that, and like the telly number at the beginning, like you talked about interact with the audience. You know, Australians aren't necessarily familiar with panto, but the British heritage is much more present in Australian culture than it is in American. So
yeah, you're right. And also, I feel like Matilda was killing it, and then School of Rock opened on Broadway, and I think that kind of pulled a lot of sales from Matilda as well, because people were like, oh, this is because of what, you know, people like that reviewer saying it's a kid's show. I think a lot of people were approaching in America Matilda as a kid's show, and then when School of Rock opened, they're like, oh, we'll take them to that, because that's the film with Jack Black in. We'll go and see that one.
Yeah, that's a rock show by Andrew Lloyd Webber. That sounds like a good time.
I mean, I must say that is another show where the child cast really do hold their own.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was really stunned. And once again, Australia killed it.
Yeah, totally. It's another show that really asks so much of the kids, and they absolutely deliver. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and they play instruments as well. Yeah, actually, School of Rock maybe takes it too far, because I'm watching that going, okay, enough. Like, we get it. You're talented.
Making me feel bad about myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I only saw School of Rock in Australia as well, and like Brent Hill was amazing in the lead, and the kids were amazing. But I feel like that was a show that I really enjoyed because the cast kind of elevated the material. Whereas what's awesome about Matilda is that all of those elements are there, and they're coming up to rise to the standard of the material.
I agree. I can't imagine. Well, as I said, I've seen Matilda so many times, and I probably have seen it with, you know, kind of averagey people in it, but I've not noticed because it's always been so strong.
Yeah. Are you aware that there is a film adaptation of the musical? It's supposed to be being filmed right now, I think. It was supposed to be being filmed August to December 2020, although obviously that's been put off by COVID-19.
No, but COVID's gone too far now, because I did not know that. And sorry
to break it to you here on the podcast, Joel.
Oh, that is the final nail in the coffin.
Well, I'm sure that they will get it up. I'm sure they'll get it up again, so to speak. But who do you think?
Have they cast it?
Well, the only information I have on the casting is who played Trunchbull. So who would be your casting?
Oh, on Trunchbull. Maybe like a John Krasinski type. I don't know. I guess you've got to be able to sing.
I will tell you that it is a British actor. It's an English actor.
Rowan Atkinson would be far too old.
It's a good suggestion. This actor's not young. I think it's pretty good casting. Ralph Fiennes.
Oh, actually, maybe I did know that. Yes, I think that's great casting.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. There is something about British actors who can really embrace the sense of the grotesque, and maybe it's the Panto Dame heritage, but I can really see him getting into it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to cast Trunchbull, just get Voldemort. I think that's the key. Oh, I wonder who else is going to get. There's so many great. I mean, every role in the show is really strong, and I really like the Wormwood roles, the mum and dad.
Oh, again,
I think
fabulous,
so
just fabulous, grotesque roles, and they're not half-assed. They don't have a moment where they're kind of redeemed. They're like, we literally hate our daughter and we want her to go away.
Yeah. At the end, the mum, she just runs off. I like that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I think that's why kids love it, because they're just like, oh my God. And again, it goes back to those kind of stories for kids. It's such a common thread, like your Annie or your Oliver. It's kids who are orphans, their parents are dead or for whatever reason. Matilda's not an orphan. She has her parents, but kind of would be better off as an orphan because they're absolutely horrific and horrible to her. Yeah,
you're right. It sort of tells the story that adults can be dicks. In so many other shows, it's kind of the adults solve the problems, but no, adults can be real assholes. I like that.
And Matilda, does everything that she does without any support. She has to find the strength from inside, which I think is an awesome lesson.
And her hysterical librarian.
True. Well, I'm sure that they will get round to making the movie. They haven't announced any more casting, although Mara Wilson has expressed an interest in having a cameo, which I think is absolutely necessary.
Absolutely necessary. I was reading an article about Mara Wilson the other day. I was trying to think of her name. She quit showbiz for ages, didn't she? And then now she's back.
Is she back?
I don't know if she's back, but I feel like she's maybe said she's I'm open to roles. Or
my DMs are open.
I'm taking scripts. Yeah.
Yeah,
which is me at all times.
I can't remember what she did. She was doing something very, I can't remember. She was a writer, actually, but she was doing something very kind of I was going to say grown up, which is dumb because, of course, she's a grown up. But, it is difficult for us to imagine those kind of child actors doing anything. But she's very active on Twitter and very kind of smart. So
I'll have to go and have a look. Yes, Mara Wilson should definitely be in it. Maybe, how old is she now?
Oh, I don't know. She'd be in her mid-30s, I guess.
I was going to say she could play Miss Honey, but they're probably going to go for a real marquee name there, I'm guessing.
I think that's a bit of a stretch. Also because she's got to be able to sing, remember. It's a musical.
Oh, yes. True. She's not a singer.
Well, not as far as we know.
Better learn.
She is 32 as we speak.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, she retired from acting in 2000 and focused on writing, but she returned to acting in 2012. I'll tell you what she did. She played a waitress in Broad City. I mean, that's cool, but it's not exactly a huge return to acting.
Yeah.
I did a voice in BoJack Horseman, and she is a voice in Big Hero 6, the series. Yeah, I mean, there's some credits here, but several of her playing herself in web series.
I feel like she needs a real Anna Chlumsky moment, who was, the girl, actually from My Girl.
Do I know Anna Chlumsky? How dare you?
Yeah. Sorry. And I feel Mara Wilson deserves an Anna Chlumsky return, a really cool return to...
Or Kieran Culkin.
Oh, yeah.
He's in Succession.
Which I haven't watched, but yeah, someone was telling me about that the other night.
He's really good in it.
Oh, yeah. Great. Okay,
he's one of the kids.
It's my next series to begin.
Have we got any other dream casting, seeing as we don't know who else is in the movie?
Dream casting, maybe Blue Ivy Carter as Matilda.
Matilda, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Mrs. Wormwood's a really gay icon type role, isn't it? Who are we giving that to?
Do you know who would be a slightly weird choice, but I can see smashing the comedy? It would be Melissa McCarthy.
Yes! Oh, yes.
I could
happily see Melissa McCarthy as Trunchbull as well.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true. But
I'll watch anything Melissa McCarthy touches.
Oh, she's fabulous. That is someone who can elevate some not great material.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, someone who can embrace the grotesque. I think that's the thing. I wonder if they'll cast all Brits or whether they'll cast Americans too.
Yeah. Oh, I hope so.
I can see Kate Winslet being a good Miss Honey, actually.
Well, she is. In my mind, she is like Miss Honey.
She is. She has that maternal energy, and she can also sing. Because you remember that she did that Christmas Carol movie, and did you ever know this? This is 20 years ago now. She did a voice in an animated Christmas Carol, and she sang a song in it called, I think it was called "What If," and it was released as a single. In the top 5 of the UK charts.
Oh, she'd be a great Miss Honey.
Yeah.
You send her a message and see if she's free.
But
I always think if you go for a big name in a role like that, then you can sort of cast Mrs. Wormwood as maybe you give that to a Leslie Margarita.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Get Kate and Rafe to do the promo circuit and pick up the slack in the song and dance department.
Yeah, they're doing the Breakfast FM rounds and everything. Right, then they can bring the theatre clout.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Because that's what I always think about. Every gay man always talks about, what's going to happen when they finally do the film version of Wicked. And I always think they really need to go heavy on all the other roles and then go unknowns as Elphaba and Glinda.
Yes, I think that's very smart. However, I don't anticipate that's what will happen when we get the film version of
Oh,
Wicked.
God, no.
I mean, they were talking for a long time about it being Leah Michelle as Elphaba, but I think she's sort of faded a little bit from the spotlight. I don't think she's got the clout anymore.
And Kristen Bell, I think, was a lot for Glinda, but that's a really tough thing. I think she can hold a tune. She's in Frozen, right? But she's not quite that level of.
She hasn't got that soprano, coloratura soprano kind of business going on.
No. But I'm very open to the idea of Meryl Streep playing Madame Morrible.
I can see that.
Kind of my only option. And Richard Gere as the wizard.
Oh, yeah. Richard Gere.
Yeah.
Wow, what happened to her?
Yeah, I think he's kind of that older, handsome, but smarmy type.
Yes.
He'd play it well.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, good. Yeah, we have fallen into dreamcasting Wicked on a podcast that's supposed to be
I know, sorry.
Maybe Richard Gere could play Mr. Wormwood. He's a bit
He
old.
could play Mr. Wormwood. Yeah, Richard Gere and Melissa McCarthy as husband and wife is a very weird
together
combo.
at last.
But hey, maybe John Krasinski would be a good Mr. Wormwood, actually, come to think of it. I don't know why I'm so hung up on him.
That's true. No, I can see that. And then maybe Emily Blunt could be in it. Actually, Emily Blunt would be a good Miss Honey, sorry. I
had a huge argument with a friend recently about whether we think Emily Blunt's talented or not. And I think she's amazing.
You're pro.
And my friend is not a fan. I couldn't believe it.
What, they didn't think she can act? Or
I find it irritating. And this is a friend whose opinion who I really respect too. I find her irritating. I'm like, she's a chameleon. She's very diverse. She's played every different type of role.
Yeah, and she's got the chops of musicals. She's done Mary Poppins. She's done Into the Woods.
Yeah, I love Emily Blunt.
Well, maybe, actually, do you know what? Emily Blunt would have been a great Matilda. Maybe we can use the Irishman de-aging technology and she can play Matilda.
She would have been a fantastic Matilda. I mean, every stage mum in the world is going to be wanting their daughter in that role, aren't they? It is going to be a bloodbath, including my mum, to put a wig on me and throw me into the audition room.
Oh, that's the true dream casting.
Oh, I'd love that. I know the karate moves from Naughty. I can do it.
Every musical ever, you can listen whenever. No script whatsoever. Yes. Skip an episode never. Every musical
Thank you so much to Joel for that chat about Matilda. I loved it. He's such a show queen. As I said, this Friday, I'm talking to Matthew Warchus, the director of the musical. Can't wait to share that with you. Hit me up if you have any comments, feedback, corrections, suggestions about Matilda this week. Use social media or our email address, all linked below. Here's a little extract from my conversation with Matthew Warchus that will go up on this feed on Friday.
I've still got Tim's emails with his demos attached as he wrote them as they came through one by one. Each email says something along the lines of, "This is shit and is of no use to us." But it's all I've got.
Classic writer.
The first song that came through was When I Grow Up, the first song he wrote. And I remember putting headphones on and listening to it. And of course, what he's written was essentially a Beatles song. But he said, I think this song, has got good things about it. The main problem is that there's nowhere for it in our show. And that was absolutely bang on. But it felt impossible to imagine not having it in the show.
Thank you for listening to Every Musical Ever. I'm your host, Richard Carroll. This theme music was composed and performed by Brent Hill, with the alternative version performed by Sheridan Harbridge. The artwork for the show was designed by Achi. The introduction, content warning, and outroduction were read by Leo Campbell. Please rate and review us wherever you found this podcast. Find us on social media at Every Musical Pod and visit our Patreon for more content. See you next week.
Every musical ever.
Thank you for listening to Every Musical Ever. If you liked it, you can give a star review on the Apple Podcast app or wherever you found this podcast. And don't forget to subscribe.